Hello and welcome to everyone across the nation joining today's workshop on how to add and edit student records. This workshop focuses on using CASAS e-tests online together with TOPS Pro Enterprise Online for manually adding or importing student records to your online database to prepare for web-based testing, as well as editing student records, in other words, correcting IDs and demographic information. This function is available with both basic and enhanced access to the online system. In other words, no TOPS Pro Enterprise license is required to perform the functions for which I will be demonstrating. Student records can be added from proctoring e-tests. However, any user you allow can be granted access to TOPS Pro Enterprise Online, in other words, the data management application, to add and edit records with or without coordinator and or proctor certification. Now folks, as a reminder, this is one of 23 complimentary CASAS Online implementation workshops. We don't expect you to attend all 23 workshops. However, we highly recommend attending as many as possible to learn about best practices. Feel free to ask questions and so that you become confident in using the online system. This simply is a training room that was set up so that we can conduct all workshops within the set. Now, online help documentation, as a reminder to everyone, is available on the CASAS website under Training and Support, e-test help documentation, as well as TOPS Pro Enterprise help documentation. You will want to be sure and bookmark both of these as your electronic go-to resources, particularly under the e-test help documentation, the CASAS e-tests online guide, which provides information covered in these workshops. I am presently updating this guide, which we update on an annual basis as we are preparing for our National Summer Institute. This guide was produced last institute for the hands-on labs. I would like to officially extend an invitation to all of you to the 2015 National Summer Institute. It's a wonderful opportunity if you can make it to sunny Southern California, specifically in San Diego. We are based in San Diego. Summer Institute is June 23rd through 25th. It's such a wonderful opportunity to network with others nationwide and to have more of a global perspective on all that CASAS has to offer and how CASAS helps many types of organizations nationwide as well as in other countries. Now, today's workshop will cover sections specifically in section, 8.8, and this is under the data management section of the guide titled Adding Students, section 8.8. This is a step-by-step tutorial on how to add a student in TOPS Pro Enterprise. Now, before we get started, as a reminder, you can access CASAS eTest Online as well as TOPS Pro Enterprise Online from the main domain name of etestonline.org. I've entered that into the chat box. You can also access our simulation server by using the main domain name and adding Rolling Hills with the final slash to access the simulation server, which is identical to the production server where you will be producing live data, either through CASAS eTest, through test administration through CASAS eTest, or by managing data, adding records, importing and scanning records into TOPS Pro Enterprise. You can perform all of those functions, folks, in the simulation server known as Rolling Hills Adult School that contains purely fictional data. So rest assured, you cannot mess up the Rolling Hills database because the database refreshes nightly, so you have the assurance of starting with a fresh database at the start of any given day. So experiment and explore away, folks. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on into today's workshop. I have a lot of information to cover for you. However, I want to be sure and encourage you to ask questions along the way. Don't feel as though you are interrupting me in the least bit. I will do my best to monitor the chat box to glean the questions that come throughout today's workshop. And some of you folks, I have had to mute your open microphones just for the benefit of everyone else. So if you happen to speak and I'm not hearing you, please enter that in the chat box. Two of you, Gladys and Carlos, I have muted your open mics for everyone's benefit. Those of you who have taken control of your mics yourselves and muted them, feel free to project your voices into the meeting room. Just don't forget to unmute your mics, okay? All right, with that, let's go ahead and move on into today's workshop. Now, folks, let's see. I'm going to go back to the guide here because the page that I would like to, let me go back to the table of contents here. And bring up this image. A little bit too large there. Here we go. Okay. Now, folks, CASAS, by now, we hope that you have come to understand that CASAS eTests Online shares a database with TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. It truly is like getting 2 for 1 with the basic CASAS eTest Online package. Because CASAS eTests users must also have a way to manage data, CASAS provides basic access to TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. This includes the ability to review data, find and edit information, merge duplicated student records, manually add, import, and export records, monitor online test administrations, as many of you saw me demonstrate in the last workshop, or the workshop just before this. Now, before you can effectively manage your data, you must first understand the relationship of records in TOPS Pro Enterprise. Enterprise is a relational database that contains a collection of interrelated records which stores information and relates records by a common element. Folks, that element is solely the student identification field, which contains the student identification code that is unique to each learner and linking all records to the learner. So as you see in this image, you have the student ID. This is known as the parent record. The interrelated records are enrollments and records related to classes, enrollments and records related to programs such as ABE, ESL, high school diploma, high school equivalency, or high school diploma completion programs, or high school equivalency prep programs, or even workforce readiness programs. Test records, solely test records alone. Everything is tied to this student, all of these records, by this one identifier, which is the student identification field. IDs are issued by you, the agency. If you have a formal registration system, the students should be given that same exact ID as it is in as the student is registered into that what we call a third-party system. If you are an organization that does not have a formal registration system, then you will definitely want to discuss and decide upon a standard method for assigning IDs to all students that you will be using CASAS e-test testing for, that you'll be using with CASAS. That includes testing, whether it's paper-based testing, computer-based testing, web-based testing, whether you are adding student records, enrolling students in classes. Everything must be, all records related to the student must contain that one unique ID. And that includes when the student goes for pre-testing, that ID needs to be the same identical ID that the student enters when they go for post-testing or progress testing, for your assurance that the student will always receive the most appropriate test based on that student's last test recorded in the online database. The student identification code provides the minimum information for TOPS Pro Enterprise to create a student demographics record. The demographics record, as mentioned, is the parent record for all learner-related records. These records contribute additional information about the student, class enrollments and records, program enrollments and records, test records. These are all known as child records in the database. These are child records of the parent student ID record, or more specifically, the student demographics record. TOPS Pro Enterprise links parent and child records by ensuring that they all include one common variable. And again, folks, that is solely the student identification code. Now, for today's workshop, I'm going to demonstrate, provide information basically in 4 areas. First, we're going to visit CASAS eTest Online through the simulation server here. And I'm signing in with the generic login. Student records can be added through CASAS eTest Online in one of 2 methods, specifically through testing sessions, either through a registration session, as you see here. You can use the CASAS eTest user interface to collect demographic data without launching into any type of an intake or pre-test session or post-test session. So the registration information will lead students, or the registration session, excuse me, will lead students through the data collection screens. That is one method for adding student records to your database. Having a separate session just for registration allows you the opportunity to dedicate your time to assisting students with responding to those data collection screens. So in other words, giving the student undivided time, separating the registration process from the testing process. So if you are able to manage that in your programs, that it's very beneficial for you. Now, some organizations don't have the liberty of scheduling 2 separate sessions, one solely for registration or pre-registration. So this is why we also recommend incorporating the registration process in the intake, in any of these intake sessions. So we have intake sessions for ABE. We also have intake session examples here for ESL. All 3 intake sessions include those data collection screens. So folks, that is one way to add student records to your database. Well, 2 ways in eTest, I'm sorry. 2 ways through a registration-only session or incorporated with testing. Once student records are added to the database, they can be viewed through the Students menu. You can filter for students, and you can also view the information that is collected through the CASAS eTest user interface. Now, folks, if I open this student record, well, actually I can't open the student record. If you double click on these records, it doesn't do anything like it does in Enterprise. So the record is non-editable. There is no editing function available through the CASAS eTest user interface, and that is intentional, folks. The CASAS eTest application is primarily for testing as well as having a user interface to collect demographic information from students. This is why we give you access to TOPS Pro Enterprise Online to add and edit records. So all data management is performed through TOPS Pro Enterprise. Launch TOPS Pro Enterprise from your web browser, an icon on your desktop, or through an icon placed in your system tray. Now let me go ahead and specify the simulation server, and we'll show you how to add student records through the TOPS Pro Enterprise user interface. Student records are added through the Records menu, Students, Demographics. Click on New, and a new student record window opens to input information about the student. Select the site at which to add the student record. We'll go ahead and add the student to the North Campus. Enter a unique ID for the student. And let's see, we can attempt to save this with no further information. However, this is just an FYI to you that to let you know that the first and last name cannot be empty. However, if I click yes, the record actually does save. So you can have ID alone. However, folks, that is never recommended. It is always recommended at minimum to complete a first and last name field, as you see here highlighted, and gender. This is for your benefit, folks, and any additional information just increases the benefit of having more information, because, for example, tomorrow we have a workshop on merging duplicated student records, and it is a whole lot easier and to clearly identify duplicates in your system when you have more data elements to compare. So we're going to, at this time, go ahead and add in our sample student record, and we'll say that our sample student is male. Now, of course, you can add a date of birth. I'll just go ahead and add today's date, but I'll just backdate this to some date in the past there. There is a hidden Social Security number field. By default, SSNs are not included in reports for privacy's sake and security's sake as well. But to know that SSNs, there is a field to enter that information. Consent, this has to do with workforce development tracking. We have an NEDP, National External Diploma Program, that has unique IDs that must be entered here. And then there's all of these other types of IDs that you can see here. Education, there is an education section, highest year of school completed, highest degree or diploma earned, California high school exit exam scores can be added here. This is all within education, as well as GED 2014 scores or the previous GED scores. We also have included HiSET scores and test scores. Now, folks, the reason why we give you the ability to add scores from all of these types of assessments is so that when you generate federal tables to monitor your data collection efforts and to glean how your data combined for all testing purposes, how is reflected in federal tables or once you submit your data for NRS reporting. Ethnicity and race, we can fill in this information. Let's see here. There are, let me just point out, I'm just going to divert over here for just a moment, folks. Under Training and Support, e-test help documentation. I believe I have it under Test Administration. It's probably not the best place for it, but a document titled Data Collection Details. Now, I shared this document as well as those data collection screens when we were having our workshops specifically on CASAS e-test. So, but to give you an idea of, or to help guide you or have your proctors help guide your proctors in helping students apply the most appropriate information, is that these screens will go through field by field to help you specify the type of information that should be entered in those fields, such as native language. Well, we have many that are bilingual, trilingual students, but it should only be the prevalent language spoken in the home when the student was a child, and so forth. Here's a personal status. If you are collecting personal status, these are data element fields to help you clearly identify the most appropriate information in those fields. So that aligns with the information that you see collected here. Now, and then consumer information is specific for WIA Title II local agencies that serve students with developmental disabilities. Let me just go right back up here to address information. You can collect zip code. Currently within the address and contact information area, zip code is a data collection screen through eTests. We have plans to add address, phone, specifically cell phone, maybe it'll have both landline and cell phone fields, as well as email. Cell phone is right here too. So that way you have a user interface to quickly collect that information. When that information is collected through CASAS e-test, that automatically populates all of the information that you see on this screen. Okay, as well as when a record is when you add this information here and save it, that brings up the navigator that demonstrates all of the areas in the database where records relate to the student. Remember that the image that I shared, let's see, here. Okay, class enrollments and records, programs enrollments and records, all of those child records are contained in the navigator here. Every student, when you add a student record, it is understood that you are adding the student record in the current program year. So go ahead and click in program year and get that record in there. The reason why I mention that, folks, is because right now we saved this student record, but there are no child records. There is no indication that this student is a current student. And if I go back to, I'll keep this window open here, if I go back here to my student demographics lister, listing all students in my database, I'll just refresh it here. And if I try to bring up my sample student, say by ID, and by the way, you have these filtering options here available to you. Whoops, I don't think I entered anything here. Notice I cannot find the student, and the reason being is that these listers, for efficiency's sake and optimal performance of the online system, all records in Lister are contained on a per program year basis. So this is the current program year, or specifically the 14-15 program year. If I uncheck that, then I will find, let's see, remove the current program year filter and click OK, then I do find the student. But folks, rather than going through all of that, my recommendation is as soon as you save the record, go right over here, folks, to the in-program years navigator and just simply add a current program year record for that student. That's all you need to do, and save the record. Trust me, folks, that saves a lot of heartache. Okay. Tomorrow we'll demonstrate how to add a test record for the student, but right now we're going to contain this with just this information. And so I'll go ahead and let's clear this. Let's go Records, Students, Demographics. Let's filter for that student. And we find the student without having to remove the current program year filter because we already add a current program year record, child record for that student. Now, folks, if that's manual data entry, let's say that there is a mistake in the student's ID. I'll just use that as an example. Double-click to open that student record. To edit any student record, or any record for that matter, if you are granted editing abilities in the online system, there will be an editing icon. By default, these screens open up in view mode. To change any one of these sections that I'm highlighting, you can click the editing icon and add that information, for example. You can also go to the More button and change the entire screen to edit mode, and that simultaneously makes all fields editable simultaneously. So let's just, I'll just shorten this up for example, and I'll just put 15 for the demonstration here, and I'll save that record. Okay. Now, not everyone is granted editing functions or editing abilities, folks, and tomorrow, I believe, we have, yes, the second workshop is on access groups, so managing user rights and permissions through access groups, so more will come on that. Now, folks, so I've demonstrated how to add a student record through the CASAS eTest user interface, through a registration session, or through the process of testing. I've demonstrated how to manually add a student record to the TOPS Pro Enterprise database. I've shown you now how to edit that student record, and as you recall, I mentioned that you cannot edit student records through the CASAS eTest user interface. So the last method I want to quickly demonstrate to you is what's called a third-party import. If you have a system capable of exporting out student demographic records, then we have this wizard that you can import student names and demographics to create your student records automatically in your online database. Now, let me demonstrate for you a method that you can do that manually. I have a folder here that contains all importable type files. These are fillable templates. Let's go ahead and click on the name and demographics template here. Now, I can provide these templates to you folks. They have detailed directions, or these templates open up with detailed directions on how to populate the template, manually populate the template. There is also information on how to create just a simple user interface to manually populate this template. It's an Excel function. And then steps to save the populated template as an importable file, and steps to import the file. So let's go ahead and take a look at the template. These are specific in how they are formatted and configured, so you should not be editing this. All you should be doing is adding the information. All records have a sequence number, in other words, indicating the number of records. This is a transcode specific to the student name and demographics import. You will specify your state, your agency name, This is a site code, so we're going to import these student records into this particular site. These are the student IDs, the first, middle, and last name. This is the minimum information, folks. Also actually gender. It was recommended to include gender and ideally date of birth as well. But notice here you have all of these other data collection screens that you can populate, and we have detailed information on how to appropriately enter that information. We provide that to you with the template. Now once you've populated your template, and this is included on the directions on the first sheet, you go to the File menu, you Save As, and I'm going to save this to my desktop. And this is where you save it to a specified location as a CSV file, a comma delimited file format. And I'm going to simply save that to my desktop. I'm going to close this file. So you have to go through all these closed screens, but the point being is that the file has to be completely closed. And folks, for sake of time, I'm just shortcutting the process here. Well, here, I'll cancel this here. That file is importable. That is the same importable file as you would acquire from a third-party system. So for both methods of acquiring the data is the same, or while the method for acquiring the data is different, the method for importing is the same through the third-party import wizard. And this gives detailed information. We don't have time to go over that information right now. I'm just going to quickly demonstrate. I'm selecting that specific file type, clicking Next. I'm specifying the CSV file format, browsing for that specified file on my desktop, which is right here, selecting that, clicking Next. The next window here, 2 records have been found to be valid. That's good news. So I have what's essentially a white lister. There's no errors. If there were errors, they would appear here down in this window. There's detailed information here on how to edit records if there are errors detected. These records look good. And notice here I can scroll along the fields or the columns, and they're somewhat not in the exact order as the import file, but the information will be contained there. Now I'm clicking Next, and I'm doing that import of those 2 records. And folks, this is a quick way to cut and paste records onto that importable template and to automatically set up those records in your online database. And let me just say, let's see, contains, well, let's see, let's not do that. Let's go to Site 2. I imported them to Site 2. And let's alphabetize here. We had, I have to remove the filter because the student, by just simply importing the students alone, does not contain an in-program years record. So here's Sample Sam. And here's Susie Student. These are the 2 records that I just imported, and they contain just this basic information that I applied to their records. I can enable what's called this child lister to view those student records. Actually, I'm not going to do that. But let me just double click on Sample Sam as an example. So you see the ID imported as well as Sample Sam. Now any other data elements that we could include on that importable template would also completely populate this. Now tomorrow, folks, we're going to demonstrate how to manually add test records as well as import test records. And with the student record existing in the then importing test records creates activity for the student, which simultaneously adds an in-program years record without you having to add that. So I know, folks, that was a lot of information to digest in such a short amount of time, but I just you have several options available to you for us to help you prepare your online database for testing. Now, let's see, Star, you said, are we doing this for each individual student one at a time? Manually adding student records is one at a time. Importing is your best way to add multiple students in one fell swoop. Okay? And it's unlimited, the number of students and at multiple site locations. And yes, I will share that template, as well as I do have all of these templates available that you saw in the the third-party import wizard. I have all of these type of imports available to you. And as we continue these workshop, folks, I will reference these imports, and trust me, by the time you end this set of workshops, you will hopefully glean how quick and simple it is to import this information, and how all of that information is simultaneously connected to all by the student ID. Okay? All right, folks. That was a lot. I will definitely, Star, I usually, and I can go ahead and send out those templates sooner than later. I usually wait till we wrap up this complete set of workshops, and then I send a very detailed follow-up email to everyone with the template folder a zipped folder attached. But the lineup for the rest of this week is adding tests, merging student records, and then managing your users through access groups, and then also how to add user accounts. And then we'll finish up this set of workshops with adding personnel records, assigning teachers to classes, enrolling students in classes, and adding instructional hours. So next week, folks, we'll end this round, or this first set of 23 online implementation workshops. Thank you so much for your participation. If there's any question that you may think of that was not, you didn't have the opportunity to ask, or you didn't think about until afterwards, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Give me the opportunity to correspond with you. And with that, folks, we'll go ahead and end today's workshop. Thank you so much for your time.